Good evening. And yes, indeed, Sean Gordon Murphy's Batman Curse of the White Knight. An example of what happens when you don't sell out to an industry that is questionably, perhaps unarguably, delivering nothing other than quality with the vast majority of their books. This one was quite impressive. I'm self-confessed fan of what Mr. Murphy did with his first run on with Batman of the his Batman series, and was only more thrilled when this one was going to include the Azrael theme. And I've been really anticipating what he was going to do with it. So let's jump right in. The story overall was pretty good for an initial exposition. It starts off with some nice background material. And these scenes use these, probably about 3 to 4 pages, use these really nice sepia washes that give you a sense of throwback of the past and really give it a little bit more life and vibrancy. Compared to the rest of the book, where sepia washes are still used, but these really speak. And it's important to note the detail in this book. This book it's written by somebody that loves this medium, and you can tell with every line, every panel has such exquisite detail and such beautiful work to it. Right down to really simple things that the colorists did that really add to depth that I want to make sure I speak about. I mean, first off, you look at the face here of this gentleman. You've got the crazed eyes, the wide eyes, which we've talked about the wide eyes before with regards to kind of the homage to the older DC, the House of Mystery and House of Secrets. And maybe that's what's being done here. I'm not sure, but you definitely get that impression. The teeth look almost feral. That whole features are almost feral. The fingers are pointed, coming out at the reader from the page. It's really excellent layout. And it's by somebody, and in this case, Sean Gordon Murphy was both the script writer and did all of the pencils and inks. And he did the cover as well that you saw. Matt Hollingsworth did all the colors for both the cover and the book. And World Design did all the letters. And the lettering here is, it's good. There's one particular panel that I really want to talk about the lettering about because it really blew me away with how creative they got. But down here you see the ancestor of Bruce Wayne. Again, we have that comparison, the contrast. Above left, that feral look, monstrous. The features are just very drawn out. Bruce Wayne's ancestor is very, he's got that jawline defined, cleft chin, very heroic Errol Flynn-esque pose with the sword out, suggesting action. It's a very nice, very well-rendered shot and scene. And then we've got the setting that's done after after a number of panels. So after you've experienced all this, then you're told when this is. Everything builds up to that, and it's just defined that, yes, you are indeed in 1685. Moving on, we have this beautiful little touch down here at the very bottom of the panel. This is so small, and this is one of the things I talk to about colorists when they're learning and they're coming up and they're asking me to, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Think about light sourcing. And I talked a little bit about it in the last X-Men book that I reviewed. What's that light source going to do to the area around it? In this case, you have a chandelier with lit candles, and what did the colorist do? He gave it a little bit of a glow. There's a little bit of a glow around those flames that it suggests in that individual panel that there's warmth and there's a little bit of a flicker going on. It's something that's extraordinarily subtle, but you're going to see subtle things like that throughout this entire book that just scream about its quality. As we move on, we cut back to modern times, contemporary times, and we get to Joker. Joker's in Arkham Asylum, and he's being escorted through the catacombs, a section of the building that's being redone. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about light sourcing here. I'll get into some of the line work first, though. If you look at those jailhouse doors, the arch stonework above them, if you look at some of the The railings, the stone railings, the concrete railings, you'll see that they're pitted, there's cracks, it's weathered. There's just it's a really nice feeling of atmosphere to the back end of kind of the center back upper right. And then if we get into some of the light sourcing, you've got the scone on the wall, and again, we see that warm glow. You've got the lamppost that's there on the stairwell. Again, you see that warm glow expanding out around the cold concrete that's around it, in contrast to the lower left where you get nothing but shadow and darkness. And then down here on the side of the stairs, again, we've got a really good example of that brightness. And so it's almost as we're moving from the left to the center to the lower right, we get brighter as we descend the stairs. We get more light. We're getting more expansive. We're moving into the room. It's a really well done shot that's very subtle. And it works perfectly. Over here on this opposite stairwell, you'll see that they did the railings. He actually did the railings to have points, and it's real fine line work, but it's just and it doesn't come across quite so well in the shot that I provided here, but it's just really nice. It's details like this that just build that atmosphere and help define this panel, and it's throughout the book. It is amazing the level of detail that is contained throughout this. Now this panel is a little bit further in. We've established what the Joker's up to. We've established his character. There's the contrast. In the first book, it was he was conflicted. There was the duality of the character. Was he Joker? Was he Jack Napier? We've now defined that he is just the Joker now, and now we're moving into Batman. And Batman is where we're going to define the duality. And how do you immediately know when you define that you're going to be dealing with the duality of Batman and how Bruce Wayne and Batman are dealing with their conflicting identities internal to the character? It's real simple. You make his shadow look like Batman. So you've got both Bruce Wayne and Batman in this panel as he reads this letter. And this letter is done really, it's really nicely done. It's the attention to detail. Again, I'm going to be harping on this for this whole discussion. The text on the cover of the letter is Bruce backwards in cursive, and the cursive matches the cursive of the letter. It's really subtle, and it's upside down because he has opened the letter up. It's just, this is detail that you always used to see in comics that you don't ever see anymore. It's something that is just, to me, when I'm flipping through the book, before I even read it, I always flip through it just to look, and this caught my eye, and it was so well done. And then we've got the scripting on through, and then we've got this beautiful panel that's split down the way, and again, that's suggesting duality of the character. You've got the shadowed side of the room, the light side of the room, the Bruce Wayne, the Batman character. It's carrying off the theme from the panel above it. It's really well done, and the letterist here did a brilliant thing. Instead of just doing a simple narration bubble, what they did is they scripted out the letter over the panel, and it's in cursive, and it builds. It's a cathartic moment, and it really it's not forcing the exposition, but it really lets you know that this is an emotional foundation that they're only going to build on throughout the course of the book. Then we jump back after we've defined a little bit of the Bruce Wayne character. We jump back. The Joker's now out of Arkham, and now he's establishing his grand plan. And there's a couple of really nice things. I picked this panel in particular because there's two things I really like about it. Number one, it's a nice panel, but the striping on the pants is just exceptional. You get this really nice fragility to the stripes and how they're lined on. And there's just enough color that it stands out from everything else. Meanwhile, you've got a black and white background of the cityscape that makes everything in the foreground really jump out and stand out at you. And then especially when contrasted with the Joker's pale complexion, it just builds on the scene, and you get to know everything you need to know about this character. Now, I should have done this, but I didn't. But I want you to take a look in the lower right-hand corner. Again, this is that fine level of detail. You don't just have the pen and ink stand. You don't just have the notepad sitting on the desk. That actually you can see that not only did he individually line the rings of the notepad, they're shadowed as well, which is just incredibly impressive detail. Also at the lower right, there are note cards that show scribbling on them. They're not just a stack of paper. They actually show the scribbling of writing on them. Again, it's that fine level of detail. Moving forward too, now we start to get into the Batman character and a little bit more of the exposition, and we build the exposition through character interaction throughout this entire book and dialogue. And the dialogue doesn't force the exposition, it builds it slowly. The scripting on this it's not perfect, but it's really, really well done. And honestly, in the sea of the vast majority of mainstream books coming from Marvel, DC, Image, this is like, it's head and shoulders above anything else being released. The cover price on this, I think, is $4, $5. Go out and get it. You're getting it's a hell of a book for the price point. It's just amazing. If you look at Batman's tool belt here, again, we're going to talk about that fine detail. It's got everything you could ask for and more. It's got shadow work. It's got light sourcing. The lighting above is shining down. The shadows are correct. He's walking through a lighted field, so the shadows are being cast back away from his direction of motion. His cape's flowing up. You get this really nicely rendered character with really fine line work. If you compare the bulk of Batman's character to the thinness of this character, you get that sense that there's difference in not just perspective, but difference in body and build. There's power, there's fragility, there's agility, there's depth. It's just a really nice contrast, very simply done. Down here at the bottom, again, it's just a further example of that fine detail work with just things that you'd see every day in an office, but they're paid with just as much of attention. The background of every panel is just as much a character as every main character that's in it. Everything in every panel on this book sings. I can't praise it enough. I was so impressed going through it. It honestly took me, it took me 2 reads through before I really found any kind of a problem with any of the story or any of the dialogue that I felt was clunky at all, because every aspect of the book just sang so much that the art is actually pushing the story back a little bit. And that's not a bad thing for a comic book to do, because it's a visual medium. The writing needs to help support the art. It doesn't have to carry the art. And that's one of the things that's just been a massive problem, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, is they're really trying to use these great writers to carry marginal art. And in this case, you've got Sean Gordon Murphy, who's an excellent writer, but he's a better artist, and his writing is complementing his art. We introduced the Jean-Paul Valley character, the heir to the Azrael crown. In between these segments, he ends up being in this beautiful church sequence. And again, this is the only problem that I found in the book. I found these candles, again, have that beautiful light source and glow. You see it on the shelf between the 2 windows. And then when the lights go out and you get that flick, you get the candles are still there. They're still in approximately the same position, but you get the contrast of these 2 windows positions in relationship to the height of the candles. It's so nitpicky, but I wanted to point it out because I flipped through this book probably 3 or 4 times trying to find anything that I could talk about that was even remotely comparable to the X-Men Wildstorm book to show any kind of an issue. And this is all I could find. Additionally, you get, as the lights go out, you get this great negative effect. And the Jean-Paul Valley character goes from standing in a lit room and being a character to simply being a silhouette as he's being presented with this opportunity by the mysterious character involved. And the book ends with a really nice send up to the next book as far as where it's heading. I think if there was anything that you could say would even be close to a possible miss in this, it's kind of how Azrael was worked into the story. And I have full faith in Sean Gordon Murphy based off of his first book, his first series, that Curse of the White Knight is going to use Azrael correctly. If it was anybody else, I'd be very concerned with how it was introduced. It just felt a little clunky. This is the preview for book 2 with Azrael, and there's a few things I wanted to comment on here. It's just the line work on this pauldron on the shoulder with the wings and the feathers and the gilding. It's impressive. You don't see this in mainstream books that are just sitting on the shelf anymore. This is something that belongs in 1993 and 1992. when all the artists were competing with each other, and there was a real big sense of pride in everybody's work. It's just, it's such a throwback to an era that I remember so fondly, that his work just, like I said earlier, it sings. Detail work around the M6, the AR-15 M16, the belt, the pouches, the shadow work here. It's a little sloppy. It's just kind of a sketch. It's just a preview. But even then, you get these really nice scratches, scratching effects for the dynamic lines. It's just, it has so much depth for even just a preview page. This would be worthy of a cover on most any other series. But with what Mr. Murphy and Mr. Hollingsworth are doing, I mean, this is in the back of the book. This is on a sketch page. On, hey, this is the kind of stuff you're going to experience coming up in the series. So overall, I'd rate this book. I'm not a 10 out of 10 guy. I would rate this a high 8.5 to a 9.5, somewhere in there, probably closer to a full 9. It's one of the first books. It's the first book I'm ever going to recommend you actually purchase and read on my channel. I recommend following the series just based off of where it's headed. It's going to be a rise to redemption story with a little bit of an Icacerian twist. In the first one, you had Joker separating himself into the Jack Napier character and building a redemption arc. This is, you really get the strong impression that Joker is going to be on that the crashing side of that Icarus journey, and he's bringing himself back, but because he's now the Joker again, it's an attainment to the virtue that he values, because he's trying to reestablish himself as the villain. I really look forward to how they do that. I'm really looking forward to how they play off that duality of Batman and how they build upon that emotional foundation that he dealt with in the scene that I talked about, the letter. And like I said, my only concern is how they're going to use Azrael as a plot mechanism to play off those two different arcs. And I'm sure Mr. Murphy has something beautiful in store for us. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. It was a real treat to read. And you know what? Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you all joining the chat. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Share the link out if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.